Hey everyone, welcome everyone to another test video. Here for the test video, I'm explaining to you guys the test here to see how the video ends up. If the video ends up good, I'm here explaining to you about why it might be impossible to think of or imagine new music, because many people have the discussion speak about why we cannot imagine new colors, but now I'm telling you why we cannot imagine new music, actually. Now let me explain you why. Number one, music is made of octaves, nodes, melodies, and things like that. That is what music is made of. Octaves, nodes, melodies. And each octave, in fact, I heard that there's around 2 to the 211 millionth power to store a 5 different possible 5-minute audio files. And that is a huge number with 63 million digits long. That is a gigantic number, okay? But here is an example. Here's an example why we cannot think of new music. It's because, actually, interestingly enough, is that even if you believe you are a professional singer and you start to have your day and think of and you try to sing something, you're actually singing from melodies that you've heard before. You're singing from octaves and melodies that you've heard before, guys, okay? And as an example, you see, for example, guys, your brain, for example, guys, even if you go, for example, guys, for example, here's an example. If you were back in the days in a jungle, you were living in a jungle back in the days completely, guys. Back in days, you're in that jungle, you see. What will happen if you tried to come up with new music? In fact, it will be impossible. In fact, if you're in a jungle and the only sound you hear is your voice, you can speak, the only sound you hear is your voice, no sound of water, no sound of the birds, no sound, everything is silent, all you can hear is your voice. And you try to sing, you wouldn't be able to sing because melodies will be stored inside your brain. So when you remember a melody or a rhythm in some way, you actually flow with the rhythm. And all the others, when you try, actually are part of that rhythm. In fact, you will not be able to sing anything. And it will not sound like any good. It won't even sound good. You won't be able to even make a vocals to make a music. Why? Because the music that you hear, you're able to express the vocals the same way. Therefore, if you never heard music, you wouldn't sound like anything. Your song, you'll just sound like a muffled expression, like, hey, like, how is it? Like, for example, like that. It'll sound like you're expressing, it'll sound like, how are, like, it wouldn't sound like, your song wouldn't sound like, here, it wouldn't sound like 000, am I even real? No, it will never sound like that at all. Your song will never even sound like that because you have not heard of a real song and that contains part of these rhythms, melodies, and all sorts of things like that. So therefore, you cannot create a new song in your imagination, in fact, plainly from nothing. All the other songs are most probably just part of those ones that are different and then practiced out to make a rhythm. In fact, you could never create any song if you've never heard. You might have an amazing singing voice, but if you've never heard of a real song, doesn't matter how good your voice is going to be for that song, you could never sing it because you've never heard of rhythm, the same rhythm. So you could never even sing anything as well that contains the same rhythm. Your song would sound like, how? If you go like this, and you sound like shouting, like, hey, it would sound like, hey, how are you? It would sound like that. It might sound a little bit, but in fact, I would strongly convinced that you would barely not make even at all any music for this because I'm strongly convinced, guys, that music created in the mind is impossible. Not impossible to come from nothing. Like For example, if you are here, then suddenly a song would come into your head from nothing, like click, and then like that you've never heard before. That's impossible, right? That it's gonna be extremely unlikely for that to happen. For example, if I listen to my favorite songs, and then suddenly one song I've never heard before, but then suddenly that song that I've never heard before, I come to my head a song I've never heard before that is published. I mean, I've never heard of that song. It's gonna be very unlikely for that to happen. You see, mostly when you're singing or when you're trying to sing. Actually, is my philosophy is that my philosophy means that my discovery is, and my strong conviction is, what I'm strongly convinced would be my philosophy. I'm strongly convinced that it is, for example, not possible to create music or to make up a song from nothing. Other when you're singing, you're actually using part of rhythms that you've heard before. That's what I'm saying right there. And even if you could try without, but it will not sound like proper music. So it's making it sound good. And the reason for this, what I believe, is because it's difficult to find you have to search for something different. Like I know this sounds cool, but I can't comprehend something different. It's like thinking, it's literally no more different than art. Literally, music is different and art is different. In fact, art might be more possible to visualize than you can visualize new pictures, but not new music in a way. And when I say you cannot visualize new music, what I'm trying to say here is I'm not trying to say that as a musical artist you cannot create new music. No, I'm not trying to say that completely. What I'm trying to say here is that you cannot create music out of like a click. It will take time. That's the purpose. What I'm trying to explain to you guys, that it will take time to create new music, not a click. It's not going to be a click, guys. It will be time. You see, guys, it's going to be a time, not a click. You see, it will never be a click. You see, it's actually going to be a time, and so that way, next time, you know what I mean, you practice the rhythms, the notes, and things like that, because music was created back in the days. Music was created a long time ago, and music was actually made because of the material of the instruments that produced the sounds. If you imagine you have a vocal violin, you make a tune. You didn't create that yourself. No, it's the sound is what it magically came out of that. It's like something amazing that came out from this. Imagine you're playing a violin for the first time, and what you're pressing sounds like music. It's what came out, because if we've never heard of music before, we would never, for example, without practice, without instruments or anything like that, to hear what music sounds like, getting to know what music is and what music sounds like. In fact, if we aren't unable to understand what music sounds like, we can never think of new music. And that's what I'm trying to tell you here. I'm trying to tell you that you cannot suddenly, I'm trying to tell you guys, that thinking of new music will be impossible if you don't know how it sounds like, how rhythms sound like. You even have to make it like, hey, or how. Even one tune. If you cannot make a tune or even imagine a voice being different, then music is impossible. In fact, when if I were to go like hey how hey or something like that, yes, you could try your own a little bit, but with the practice, which I did create a few songs back in the days, back in my videos, that sounded a little different. But that's because I took my time. You see, that's because I took my time to practice and make it sound good. You see, for me to suddenly have this song in my head will be impossible. And the songs aren't even proper songs, because I'm not a musician. However, they're good enough, you see. So, that's what I'm trying to tell you guys. When I talk about music, that I was strongly convinced in my philosophy that music is basically like if you were to live in the forest, or somewhere isolated and you've never heard any music before, only thing you hear is your voice, perhaps the crunching of leaves and stuff like that as well, the crunching of leaves and trees, and that's all you've heard. That's literally that. And that's that. You could never even think about singing with the rhythm of some other song. Never. Literally, it's not going to happen. That's what I'm trying to tell you guys. That's, if you've never heard of those songs before, yes, you could try your best to sing, but you would never be able to even express the chords to come that way. Only way you'll be able to think or get music is if you actually found an instrument or something that had the music, perhaps from the birds or anything like that, like from drums or anything like that, that produced some sound of music, you see. And back in the days, if you cannot comprehend music, how are we ever going to comprehend how to create music? Because if before music was created, like now we can imagine music, we can think of music, and we can imagine and listen, hear like how the music sounds in our heads. But before music was created, that would be impossible. We would never be able to even imagine music. We could have the idea, but never be able to imagine it. So anyways, I hope you're interested for your question topic. See you guys, bye.